you, Philippa. So how do you create national prosperity? And this has been the question that we have been researching and really considering for quite some time. As Alan mentioned, 15 years on the index. And through that, we've looked at the history of nations and how they've developed over decades, and not least Botswana's is one of our prime examples. Three patterns have emerged. And the first is that successful nations that go on that pathway build inclusive societies. You've heard Alan mention it. And this is about starting at the basis of creating a sense of national cohesion that allows for that safety and security that we heard about in the first video. And this really is the starting point to allow people to engage with each other with shared values and vision. And this is, by the way, no mean feat. I mean, as we have worked and talked with people in countries such as Ethiopia or the Central African Republic, these are real life challenges today. The really important thing about this safety and this security is that it comes from the bottom up rather than through coercion. Because if people aren't free, if they're not able to pursue their own lives without undue restrictions or discrimination, they can't fulfill themselves or their colleagues. And this requires real protection of those freedoms we just heard about, freedom of speech, worship, and assembly, because that's what's going to allow people to take advantage of the opportunities for economic and social well-being. Because so many of these opportunities involve people being able to dream, to imagine, to experiment. And that requires a sense of freedom, because if you don't have that integral sense of freedom, you're not going to try things out because of the fear factor. So that's one reason why we have pointed out these issues of freedom are so important to prosperity. But now, of course, society is complex, and there needs to be some form of coordination. We can't just have anarchy. And this is where good governance comes in. The starting point here is around the sense of having political capacity that allows decisions to be made, but then they are respected and accepted. And the underpinnings of that is to have real political accountability and a government whose actions and they subject themselves to the rule of law, because then you've got that popular acceptability. And also underpinning that needs to be a government whose actions are focused on the needs of the citizens and doing so with integrity and without corruption, because then you start to have a real sense of a social contract. And in addition to that, social capital, that sense of those nurturing bonds, strong families supporting each other, neighbors and friends engaging, but most particularly, and this comes from having that cohesion in the first place, trust between strangers, because we're so much more than our direct connections. We need that trust, and all the evidence is that societies that have stronger bonds of trust between strangers have greater social and greater economic well-being. So that's encapsulating theme number one, how to create an inclusive society. Now, in parallel, an open economy is needed to create the wealth and the resources that we all need. And that's not about simply around enabling international trade. In fact, that sense of openness is most important when you think domestically. The opportunity for everybody to be able to engage in commerce, not just the privileged insiders. So the property rights are as secure for a rural smallholder as they are for the international conglomerate working in a business park. Or so that the regulations, the business regulations that we heard about, are as supportive of an informal urban worker as they may be for somebody working in a large corporation using public procurement or whatever. It's a really critical sense that the entire economy is working together, that everybody's able to participate. And when we contrast that with places with closed political systems, whether it's from Algeria to Zimbabwe, what you see is in those political systems, the economic structures are designed, in effect, to maintain power and to reward the elites. But what we need is the democratization. The open economy is about democratizing the economy so everybody participates. And that idea of earned success is available to all. So that leads me on to the third theme, empowered people, where the goods and services, the resources, the wealth in the economy are deployed in a way that allows everybody to be able to earn a good living, to be able to take care of their health and access healthcare, so that society is investing in its future through education. In a way, a critical point, a critical juncture point for so many countries in their development path is to be able to say, we don't need aid to help us with all these things. We are now working as a society, we're generating our own resources, we're investing in our people, and we're truly empowered because actually it's coming from within. And you see that in a real contrast, say, for example, between the way the country at the top of the index, Norway, has a sovereign wealth fund where it's not extracting oil and using it for self-serving purposes. It's investing in its future. In contrast, for example, say Venezuela or Russia, not doing that. It's not creating an empowered society. And the real telltale sign of whether this is working actually is when you look at the natural environment. Because societies that are inclusive societies, where the economy is open and engaged and people are empowered, these are the societies that are stewarding the natural environment because they can and they want to. And this is really important when we start thinking about prosperity through the generations. And that in a nutshell is the virtuous cycle that we propose that nations are able to go on, creating an inclusive society that allows an open economy to flourish and where the resources are invested in empowering people. Now, this, to conclude, is by no means an easy matter. And I think it's well worth recognizing that this requires a long journey, vision, and determination. And I think just to pick up on that theme on vision and determination, I'd like you to welcome Philippa back to introduce our next topic.